One, two, three. This is Dr. Alex Avila, and it's Love University, and we're back. I'm an author, speaker, and psychologist. Every week we talk about how to improve yourself, love others, and higher nature. And we really talk about how to transform yourself into a person that is content, happy, and consistent in the way you live your life in terms of health, finances, career. And we've been having some really great guest speakers. Now we're in our fall semester. And today we have a really interesting guest, and I'm very happy to have him on board. And he's going to be talking about something that I think a lot of us need in our society today. And this is Carl Honore, who is an award-winning writer. His latest book is The Slow Fix. He's a broadcaster, a TED speaker. He's also the global spokesperson for what's called the Slow Movement, a very interesting movement we're going to talk about. He speaks to corporations, Citibank, Microsoft, as well as schools and many centers throughout the world. He's featured on TV and radio shows on basically how to slow down and live a content and happy life. His TED Talk on slowing down has reached over 2.7 million views. He also likes to play slow sports. He calls hockey and squash. Welcome, Carl, to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I didn't know hockey and squash were slow sports. I thought they sounded like they're pretty fast.
It depends how you play them. But, yeah, that was a slightly tongue-in-cheek one. I like a bit of speed, and I like fast.
I see. Now, that's what I want to get into.
We'll discover as this conversation goes along.
Yes. Now, Carl, I noticed that I'm a fast talker. I know you're kind of fast talker, and I like basketball. I don't like baseball. So what do we do? You know, we're fast people. Should we become slow? What's the advantage of being a slow person in the world?
Well, let me make it very clear up front that when we talk about being slow, we don't mean doing everything slowly. It would be absurd, be preposterous, and it would go against the grain for faster people like you and me. I mean, faster is often better. We all know that. But not always. This slow revolution or slow movement is about doing things at the right speed. You know, so sometimes you're fast, sometimes you're in turbo mode.
Yes.
Other times you slow down and you're in tortoise mode. It's about the relearning the lost art of shifting gears and being present and in the moment, doing one thing at a time. Sometimes you're fast, but sometimes you're slow. It's ultimately about doing everything as well as possible instead of as fast as possible. And once you take that slow chip, slip it in, you realize it can revolutionize everything you do.
Now, is this a movement for us fast people that we need to be slower, or is it for everybody, or how do you view this so-called slow movement to slow people down?
I think it's a movement for everybody because it's about finding the right tempo or the right pace or the right speed. It means that for some people, like the faster people, it's going to help you slow down a bit and find that inner tortoise. But for maybe people who are moving a little too slowly and need to speed up, it'll give them the oomph and the inspiration to ratchet it up a gear or two as well, so that we all find ourselves in that sweet spot in the middle where we're doing things at the right speed instead of as fast as possible or too slowly, right? Like I'm not an extremist or a fundamentalist of slowness. You know, speed is often good. It's about finding that right pace for each person. You know, what's fast for you might be slow for me. So it's about having that flexibility, that freedom to choose the right gear for the right moment for each person.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me that this has actually become an actual movement, something that is maybe changing the world. And what are the benefits? I think you talk about it, you've written some books on this, you do a lot of speaking and even shows. What are the benefits of being a little bit slower paced personality?
I think there's a whole long laundry list of benefits. I mean, let's start with pleasure. You know, being in the moment, living the moment fully, that's when the joy, the magic, and the music happens. You know, when you're eating a meal, when you're present there, rather than wolfing it down with one eye on the television, you just enjoy it more. So there's more pleasure to be had in a life lived at the right speed. There's a lot of research that shows, and companies are jumping all over this, that slowing down also unlocks our creativity at work. If we slow down judiciously at the right moments, you know, we take vacations when it makes sense to, then we become more productive, you know, in the longer term. So it's good for the bottom line, slowing down. Something else happens with slowing down, I think that's pretty wonderful, and that is that human relationships become deeper and stronger because you have time for the people who matter to you. And when you're with those people, you're with them. You're not looking at your to-do list or wondering if your phone is vibrating in your pocket. You're present. And so our relationships become richer, more textured, more nourishing, I think, when we slow down.
Yes.
Another benefit that we gain from putting on the brakes is that we start to ask the bigger questions. You know, I think one of the things we sacrifice on the altar of speed is depth. You know, meaning we never ask ourselves, who am I? You know, what's my purpose in this world? Am I leading the right life for me? Because we're just so obsessed with sweating the small stuff. We're all about the trivial, the now, where are my keys? I'm late for my 11 a.m. We never ask the big questions. And I think one of the big benefits you gain from slowing down is the time and the space to ask those really big questions that help you put you on the path to lead the life you were always meant to lead.
That's really well said, and I really agree with you. I think you're talking about two major issues. One is meaning in life. I think you're saying, going deeper into what really matters to you, whether it's, your higher power or your family or, something you want to accomplish. But also the word compassion. And many times patience is connected to compassion. When people are impatient, they don't have compassion to listen to other people and really care about them because they're so worried about, the things they have to do and they're rushing through the world. But Carl, here's the issue though. How can we slow down? Because I think you mentioned there are a lot of obstacles. You said the fear of being with your own thoughts, what we call the monkey mind, the chattering thoughts. And also this idea of being impatient. Are we an impatient society? Do we just want things immediately? How do we get around that? It sounds like a huge obstacle.
It's not easy, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. We're all marinated in the same culture of busyness, impatience, multitasking, distraction, stimulation, and that does make it difficult to find our inner tortoise. But our inner tortoise is there, and we all need and want to get in touch with it. So there are steps that all of us can take.
Yes.
And usually they're small steps. I always advise people when it comes to slowing down, when it comes to stepping off the fast forward treadmill, not to try and, this is one of the ironies of today, is that we're all in such a rush we even want to slow down in a hurry. But that doesn't work. You've got to slow down slowly with small steps. So you say, well, maybe today I'll look at my to-do list. I'll drop one thing and see how that works for me.
Right.
Or today I'll use the off button on my cell phone for an hour in the morning. And just sort of build up from there and just run little experiments in your own life, work out how you can slow down, and then build up from there. Don't try and do it all at once because you'll end up it'll end in tears.
That makes sense. Now, you do mention we live in the fast-forward world. You say we have fast food, fast sex, fast dating, and all this kind of stuff. And then people don't really enjoy the pleasures of these essential activities. I actually have a conference I put on called the Dating Masquerade, where people put on masks and they meet each other based on personality type. So it's more like depth dating as opposed to speed dating. So in this kind of world that we live in, can you imagine the opposite? I mean, can we have a slow restaurant? Can we have, instead of driving through, you have to sit down and eat? Is that kind of the idea?
Well, I think that's the way we're moving. And people are just fed up with the kind of drive-through, drive-by culture. And that's why you're seeing so much more, interest in cooking at home, and not just at Thanksgiving, right? People taking the time on the weekend to go, maybe go to a farmer's market, or maybe just go to a very simple supermarket, buy a few things, cook them with their partner, and eat around the table with the phones turned off. These are things that people are going back to because they are profoundly human. They nourish our soul and our body. They bring us together. And if you look at another example of that tidal shift that's going on culturally towards slowness, the whole move towards bringing crafts back and people doing knitting or getting old, listening to records on turntables, turning away from e-readers and getting books, paper that they turn in their hand. All that is part of the bigger, broader shift towards what you might call slow, because people want things that are tactile, that are unique, that are monomedia, and that are human ultimately. That's where we're going to end up. It's going to take us time to get there, but by some of these examples I've just cited now show that that's the way the wind is blowing.
I see. So Carl, you're the founder of the slow movement. Are you one of the founding fathers, would you say?
Well, I'm usually called the godfather or the go-to, the guru. Well, there was before I started writing about this, there was a slow food movement. But my first book really put on the map the idea of a broader slow movement. We could apply this principle of slowing down to every aspect of our lives. So in that sense, I suppose I'm the kind of
I see. You're the slow father of the movement, right?
I'm Mr. Slow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now here's another thing I'm thinking about, Carl, as I see this stuff, and it's really very interesting. Okay, I want to be slow. I want to slow down my pace and be more relaxed and meditative. But other people don't let me do that. Other people want me to immediately respond to their texts, their emails. Otherwise, I'm going to lose a business opportunity maybe, or a relationship. People get mad at you. So how do you deal with other people that are pressuring you to instantly respond to their quick personality?
You have to wean people off that expectation, because in our society, no man is an island. We're all interconnected, and no man or woman can declare unilateral slowness today, right? Without telling anyone why you're doing it. You've got to prepare the way. If it's in the workplace, you've got to explain to your colleagues that, I don't know, this week you're going to run an experiment where you're not available between 5 and 7 on weekdays on the phone. And then at the end of the week, sort of see how it goes. Get a conversation going on, open a dialogue with other people. Because other people are in the same boat, right? We're all caught in this Mexican standoff where everybody's desperate to slow down, but we're all terrified to take the first step. So if you're going to be the person who takes the first step, don't take that step alone. Get out to your social circles, into your workplace and say, look, let's have a conversation about where slow could work for us together. And let's try it out. Let's try using our gadgets more wisely. Let's try leaving the office when the work is done. Let's try within our social circle, maybe allowing someone to say no to a social engagement, 1 out of 3, rather than feeling they have to go to every single thing in a social group. And just get the ball rolling, get the conversation happening. And it becomes, once you take the first step and you realize that it works for you and that it's not so alienating to other people, and in fact, they begin to follow in your footsteps and make similar changes, then it becomes less frightening and more permissible and easier to follow that slow road.
I see. Because you're kind of taking a word that traditionally has had maybe negative stereotypes. Slow, I think you mentioned people think of dumb and lazy. And I wrote a book called The Gift of Shyness back in the day that kind of looked at shyness in a more positive light, that people who are shy are sensitive and they're deep thinkers. But they are also self-conscious, so there are some challenges to being shy. So in the idea of slow, so how do you deal with those stereotypes? Because people think, they don't have much intellectual capacity. They are slow in nature.
Well, I think you're right. There's a deep and abiding taboo against the very idea of slowness. It's a 4-letter word in our culture, and it's a byword for lazy and all the things nobody wants to be associated with. But that taboo, that's what the whole slow movement is about. It's about destroying that taboo. And it gets easier and easier to challenge it the more and more examples you have of people out there in the world, companies, schools, organizations, rallying around the idea that slower can be better. I mean, I'll just give you one example. A little while ago, Harvard University sent out a letter to all first-year students saying, welcome to Harvard. We want you to reach for the stars, be the best you can be. But in order to do that, you need to avoid getting overscheduled. You need to leave empty time in your schedule for drifting around campus, sitting under an apple tree like Isaac Newton. And the title of that letter from Harvard University, right? Harvard, yes, which is probably the Mount Olympus of academic achievement, right, on the world stage, or at the same time, the pot of gold at the end of many parenting rainbows. The title of that letter from Harvard was simply "Slow Down," right? So there's an immensely prestigious institution like Harvard embracing more and more this idea of slow. The more loudly they do so, the easier it becomes for the rest of us to say, you know what, I'm not scared anymore. I'm going to slow down in this moment in order to be a better parent, a better employee, a better friend, a better neighbor, a better politician, a better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You don't make slow, you challenge this idea at every turn that it's boring, that it's stepping back. Actually, the opposite. It's about lighting yourself up, getting into the right groove, the right rhythm for you so that you can bring the best version of yourself to the table.
Yeah, and I think what I like about this, Carl, is that you really are teaching balance, and neither extreme is healthy. Because I can imagine that, let's say someone's very slow and they're always late to everything, and you're affecting other people. Now, would that be a bad thing if you're always late because you're slow?
Absolutely. I mean, there's bad slow and good slow. There's bad fast and good fast because it's all about striking the right balance. So if you're constantly late and putting other people out, that's bad slow. If you miss a crucial deadline at work and cost your company dollars and cents, that's bad slow. But there's good slow too. The evolutionary idea. The good slow is taking the time to think about a decision from every angle to make the best call. Or good slow is stopping and listening to a colleague or a friend or a family member who's upset and needs someone to be there, really there, rather than just pretending to be there.
That's actually very good. And then
this is got good flow, right?
Yes. And then good fast, I guess you talk about like saving someone's life in a restaurant who's choking or something like that. That would be good fast.
Yeah, if in a restaurant, you don't start doing Reiki on them, right? You do the Heimlich maneuver. You go for the fast response. You don't go for the slow response. But in other times, if someone's suffering from a different kind of chronic illness, Heimlich maneuver is not going to help them, right? They need something probably more slow, where they're being listened to, touched over a long period of time. So there's another example or metaphor right there in medicine. Sometimes you've got to be fast. Sometimes you need the emergency room where they just get right in there and just do it. But other times you need something more considered, something more holistic, something slower. And this is, I mentioned Harvard University as an example. I'll give you another one from the corporate world. The Economist magazine a little while ago did a report or a big survey looking at the modern work environment. And they came to a conclusion that is actually a perfect summation of my slow philosophy. The final 2 lines of that Economist article or survey were, forget frantic acceleration. Mastering the clock of business means choosing when to be fast and when to be slow, right? And there it is, in a nutshell, the slow philosophy. And that's the Economist, right? It's not Buddhist Monthly. It's not Acupuncture Weekly, right? It's the in-house Bible of some of the fastest moving, most successful, most hard-charging, most ambitious people on the planet. And they are saying the same thing as Harvard. They're saying the same thing as me. They're saying sometimes fast is good. Sometimes fast is great.
Right.
But sometimes slow is better.
Yeah,
It's
a
a very simple message.
Exactly. So, Carl, you're not really anti-speed. You're kind of looking at a balanced lifestyle. And one thing is, I'm writing a new book called Invincible You, a kind of a Western and Eastern spiritual psychology book. And I talk about patience as one of the great virtues, and even exercising your patience muscles. I say to people, intentionally choose a longer line and wait there just to develop your patience. And you see a lot of people are impatient. They want to get through the line quickly. So that's going to be for some people, it's going to be a challenge. And I think I see in Western societies, patience is not really something that's taught in schools and things like that.
No, I mean, but patience still is a virtue. In fact, I would argue that it's a more important virtue today than ever before, because it's precisely when the world is moving so fast that we really need to slow down. And I love the idea of, what you say there, teaching people or giving them little tips on how to work those patience muscles up again, which have probably atrophied in many of us to jump into the longer line or not to hop into what appears to be the faster moving lane in traffic, just to sit with the slowness, sit with what feels like frustration and allow it to happen. And try to make something of it, try to come out the other end of it, use that moment to breathe, to reflect, to recharge, and then you're ready for the next moment when you do have to speed up and the traffic clears, the line ends, and you're there, more present, right? Because you had that slow moment that allows you, when the fast comes along, to make the most of it.
Yeah, and I think you said something that a lot of this stuff started in Italy, the slow food movement and slow sacks and even slow cities. So, Carl, shouldn't we just move to Italy and just live there and just live a relaxed life? Is that the best way?
Italy is a perfect example of the mix of good slow and bad slow, right? I mean, Italians are wonderful. They're probably world champions of good slow when it comes to food and enjoying the pleasures of the table.
Right.
But when it comes to bureaucracy and running a government, they are also the world champions of bad slow. So it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking to move to Italy simply for the kind of, kick back and enjoy the food and the gentle, go for it. But if you want to get any work done, then I would look a little harder at that decision. In fact, people always say to me, "What's the perfect country to move to for a slow lifestyle?" And I don't think there is one. I really don't. I think that some countries get some things right, others get other things right, and some wrong. It's a mixed bag. There's no paragon perfect country out there that's cracked nut completely. Some more than others. I think the United States is probably more infected by the virus of hurry than many other Western countries. But, even in the U.S., you've got a lot of these slow ideas gathering around. I mentioned Harvard.
Yes.
A lot of companies now in the U.S. have embraced mindfulness practice. There's even companies giving staff more time off and insisting they take it. Rethinking use of technology in schools and in families. So a lot of things are happening in America as well.
Well, that brings me, Carl, to the idea that, is there any kind of research or even statistics on percentages of so-called slow versus fast personalities and slow versus fast countries? For example, would you say, like maybe Japan or something is slow and America is fast? Or is there anything about that in countries?
I've not really seen any convincing data on all that. There have been some amusing anthropological, sociological studies looking at walking speed, right? Measuring walking speed in major cities.
Yes.
And so you do tend to find that people walk very fast in Tokyo. The big city, they walk fast in New York, faster in New York than they walk in, Cleveland.
Right.
So the stereotypes tend to play out in these studies. But as far as I know, nobody's done a comprehensive and, totally bulletproof longitudinal study on either the individual metronome of people or the cultural one worldwide. I think in that sense, we're still left to look at other stats, draw their conclusions, and go with our gut. But
because culturally, I think of Japan.
I come back to what I said.
I think of Japan as they have their tea ceremony, and you see kind of a very indirect, slow, it appears to be a slower style in the culture. So I don't know if that's, and I think you mentioned even doing things like that, having tea or gardening or things like that is slowing down. Is that something that you see in certain cultures?
You do. Japan is a good example of. Japan is a very fast society, and is marred by a working culture that is just toxic through to the bone. Wow. And that drives people very hard, very fast. It makes it hard for them to slow down at all. But even with that problem on their back, the Japanese, as you've just said there, have carried on with certain traditions that are by their very nature, the tea ceremony, or the garden, the whole kind of Japanese garden thing, the Zen culture, Tai Chi, and so they're preserving some of the, and kabuki and various things that are very slow in the culture there. But Japan is, I would say, if you were looking for nations that really need to work harder on slowing down, Japan is probably pretty close to the top of that list.
Wow. Now, I know that in Spain they used to do the siesta. I heard that's going out of style a little bit, the sleeping during the day. In Britain, I think in London, are you guys a slow or fast place where you are?
Oh, London's a very fast city.
Really?
You don't find too many people here having a siesta. But the siesta is a good example. If you look at Spain, yes, the traditional siesta is not nearly as widespread as it used to be. But people now are coming back with a more modern version of the siesta. So instead of going home and having, 2 hours and a bottle of red wine and sleeping for 45 minutes or an hour, maybe you don't go home, or you go to a restaurant, you have a bottle of water, and you have a 15-minute nap, the kind of nap that NASA recommends, between 20 and 24 minutes to recharge your batteries. You come back in the afternoon, refueled, focused, more concentrated, making fewer mistakes, all that good stuff. So you don't want to write off the whole idea of a siesta. It's the type of siesta. So in a sense, if you're looking for productivity, then a traditional full-on, lots of wine, maybe Spanish siesta probably isn't the best thing. But a leaner, meaner 21st century siesta could be. That could be an example of good slow, right?
I guess you make love with make love with your spouse, you have some wine and eat and you relax, right? And then go back to work and you get some energy for the day.
Yeah, I don't know how many days a week we could squeeze all that. It's certainly you don't even need, let's be honest. You see it in American workplaces as well, where people are having napping pods or napping rooms, and they're not going home. They're just taking 15, 20 minutes, sleeping, slowing right down, and then coming back to their desks. And that's an example of good slow in the workplace.
Now, Carl, there is another extreme to this. You've heard of the so-called 4-hour work week, and you've heard of the 1-minute manager. So you can see that some people are saying, have more leisure time and just relax, and others are saying, get things done quickly. Do you see a middle ground in between those two?
I think there has to be a middle ground. And the idea of doing everything in 1 minute, my whole journey towards slowness started when I flirted with buying a book called The 1 Minute Bedtime Story. Right? I was in such a rush to read stories to my children that I wanted to do it in 60 seconds. And that's clearly not a nice idea. And the whole idea of 1 minute meditation, 1 minute management, it sounds attractive in a society where we think we can do everything faster, but let's be honest. True managers give you a lot more than 1 minute. True parents should be reading more than 60 seconds to their children at the end of the day. So that doesn't mean you need to read 3 hours, right? So somewhere in the middle, there's a balance. The idea of a 4-hour week, that always has felt a little bit gimmicky to me. I don't think that's a viable option for most people. I know that the guy behind that is all about kind of outsourcing everything, but how many jobs can really work that way? I think that, in a sense, to go around talking about 1 minute this and 4 hours that, it just...
Right. So you think either extreme...
That's the wrong term.
Yes, either extreme is probably bad. Now, you did mention children. You actually have a book on this. You call it the fast childhood or something like that, or the micromanaging the kids, rushing the kids out. So, they say even elementary school, they're thinking about their SATs now and, all these different things. And you have your tiger moms, they're pushing them to play piano at 6 years of age. So is that good or bad? Shouldn't parents be encouraging their children to be successful, or you're saying something different?
Of course, yeah. I'm a parent. I want my children to be successful. I want them to lead amazing lives, and of course that's just natural. We don't want all that, but that should not translate into a manic micromanagement of every minute of their lives. And the problem is that many parents now, or I don't want to blame the parents, because I think often we get caught up in the society around us, but for a lot of kids now, childhood has become a race to perfection. They come out of the womb and they just, from the moment they're born, they're hitting the ground running, And I think more and more people realize that's folly. That's not what children need. They need pressure. They need to be pushed. They need structure. They need to be benchmarked and tested sometimes, but they don't need that all the time. They need those things in the right dosage. They really need the other side of that equation, which is the time and the space to explore the world on their own terms, to play freely without adults jumping in and telling them how to play faster or better. They need to get bored. We're also so terrified of boredom nowadays.
Yes, of course.
human history, when a child came to a parent and said, I'm bored, that was a kid's problem, right? Your mom would say, well, too bad. Go outside and play or find a friend. Or they'd use that immortal expression. They'd say, use your imagination. Now a kid comes to a parent and says, I'm bored. And it's the parent's fault. The parent says, oh, no, I'm failing. My child's bored. Where's the iPad? Maybe we need another extracurricular in the schedule. No, and no again. Right? You need the child to be allowed to get bored sometimes, because it's precisely in those moments of unstructured time, not knowing what's coming next, a bit restless, trying to figure it out yourself. It's in those moments that children learn how to use their imagination, right? How to think creatively, how to take pleasure from stuff, how to regulate their emotions, how to stand on their own 2 feet, how to be fully formed human beings. So that's why there's this huge push. And I think in some ways, the biggest push for slowing down, you may say, is in the world of raising children. So the slow education movement, slow parenting, slow families, all this stuff going on as parents look for ways to carve out some slow in their children's lives and in family life in general. All over the place you're finding it. I've just come back from a speaking tour of Silicon Valley in California, right?
Really?
Talking to parents and teachers, because they are all over this. And that's one of the fastest graphics on the planet. And they too are rallying to the idea that sometimes slower is better, especially for children.
Well, I think that's a good point. I'm thinking of my childhood, back in the day, we had no cell phones or internet. And I loved to read. I would read, like 8-10 books a week as a kid, and I would write. And I would disappear in a corner of the room. My parents would be frantically trying to find me, and I was reading a book and really loving it. But that's not really the case today. I don't see a lot of people reading books, for hours on end. So what's going on with that? Is there any way to recapture the reading market? Because obviously we're writers, we're authors, right? We love people to read.
Yeah. So we have an axe to grind here, right? We want more readers. But I don't, I think that we've almost hit peak distraction in a sense. I mean, people are turning back to books. I mean, people say kids don't read, but then look how many of the millions of them bought the Harry Potter novels and sat alone and read 600-700 page books.
But is an ebook the same as a regular paper book or not, Carl?
I think that's the research shows, in fact, that children and students take in information better, remember things more if it's in hard copy, paper rather than a screen. We spend so much time looking at screens anyway that I feel, if you have a choice between reading on a screen and reading a book in your hand, feeling the paper, turning the pages, turning back, marking stuff in the margins, all that those small joys that go along with true reading, I would go with that. But of course, if a choice between an e-reader and Facebook, read that novel on e-reader.
Now, Carl, I will have to admit something. You're one of the fastest talkers I've met. How does a fast talker teach people how to be slow?
Well, in some ways, I think it's a useful thing. If I were a very slow talker, with a shaven head, doing yoga 5 hours a day, people would say, well, this guy isn't from my world. Right?
Exactly.
He doesn't understand me. He's not one of us. And yet I am one of you, right? I'm somebody who is, my metronome is set naturally high.
Wow.
I like speed. I've changed completely. I used to be somebody that was always racing the clock, always felt rushed. I don't feel rushed anymore now. That doesn't mean that I still speak quickly. I play hockey fast. I move quickly. But inside, everything has shifted for me. I move through my day now, doing things at the right speed for me. I enjoy them more. My relationships are stronger. I read bedtime stories better than I did before.
I see what you're saying. So you have kind of an internal change is what you're saying, more of an equilibrium, a balance between fast and slow. But here's a question, Carl. You know about personality type, Myers-Briggs. I've written a few books on that with relationships. Now, what if you're an introverted person? You're naturally probably going to be a little slower because you're going to think deeper, take your time. But extroverts love to be with people. They're more sociable. And their energy might be geared to, quicker kind of connections. And also, if you're a spontaneous personality type, you might want to change things up, so you might get bored easier versus a structured personality. So how do we deal with that? What if we have genetic predispositions to certain styles that may be fast or slow? How do we do that in terms of helping them?
Well, I think that comes back to that very simple idea of doing things at the right speed for you. So that's why when people say, what's the recipe for slowing down? I can't say, well, here's my recipe. You go ahead and implement it, because it's never going to work for another person. Everybody's got their own genetic disposition, as you say, their own natural metronome, their own natural pace and rhythm. So slowing down, finding the right pace, striking the right balance for you always involves, first of all, slowing down and not looking out. It's about shutting out the sound and fury that spins all around us and looking inward and saying, who am I? What works for me in this moment? And trying to find and honor and defend that speed for you, rather than saying, okay, where are 10 tips from person X who's going to sort, because that's not going to work, right? That's that's the quick fix. And the quick fix seldom sorts out the problem. I'm all about the slow fix. And the slow fix is always bespoke. It's unique. It's the person working out the recipe that suits them.
Now, the thing is, I'm thinking of the idea of multitasking. I think you said research shows it's pretty inefficient. However, it does feel emotionally good. And sometimes, I do it as well. And I don't know, it seems like you're getting things done, but you're probably not as efficient. But it does feel good emotionally. Should you multitask if it feels good?
No. So if you want a simple answer, I mean, if you want a quick little rush of adrenaline, go for a run, or ring up a friend you haven't spoken to for a while. If you can't do those things, maybe do a little bit of multitasking, but don't make multitasking your default option, because it's a false economy for all of us, and that includes women. I'm afraid the human brain, even the female brain, cannot multitask. You make more mistakes, things take longer. You just don't do things as well.
Well, let me give you an example. So, Carl, I have two computer screens. I'm checking email in one and Googling something in the other. Is that good or bad?
I'd say that's bad. You're probably not hearing everything I say. That means your questions that come back to me are probably not as on point as they would be if you weren't looking at other screens. So, I would say that that's not a good thing to do as a radio presenter, definitely.
So, in other words, you're saying...
I told you.
Well, no, I'm not doing that with you right now. I said, at times I do that. No, right now I'm 100% focused on you, Carl.
There you go.
But I'm saying in general, because people do have that, they're checking their phone and a lot at the same time. And, that could be annoying, obviously, if you're with someone and they're wanting to talk to you. So that's, I think, an issue that we see, in some generations these days.
Hugely. I think we see it now in all generations, to be honest. I see my own mother is just as, in fact, she comes to stay with us, and she's spending more time on her iPad than my daughter, who's a teenager now, spends on her phone. Yeah, so I think this cuts across the generations. I think it's a bit of a myth, this all on the digital natives. I think we're all caught up in the same thing. And often it can make a small hack, a small shift in our use of gadgets can make a big difference. They've shown, for instance, that when two people are in a conversation, it could be two colleagues, a husband and wife, two friends, parent, teacher, whatever. If a phone is visible in that room, but in that space, it doesn't have to ring, vibrate, or illuminate. If it's visible, those people keep the conversation on a more superficial level, because one's wondering what's going on. Just the distraction is going on somewhere below the radar. So a simple win for everybody is the next time you're in a one-on-one, don't put your phone on the table. Just put it in your pocket, right, or in a bag or a drawer. Just put it out of the line of sight, and that's a small change that can make a big difference. You'll notice right away, I think, that the texture, the depth, the connection of that conversation will be different. It'll be better.
Yeah, definitely. I think you do talk about certain little things people can do to, develop the right balance. I call it creating the internal space. And you said something about being aware when you're going too fast, whether it's eating or driving. And you said taking some breaths and all that. So what's the advantage of doing that, having awareness of your speed?
Well, I think that, as we've already said a couple times, we live in a world that's constantly pushing us to do more and more, faster and faster. And the default setting for everything around us is fast, right? It's distraction. And so we lose awareness of what's going on in our own bodies, our own pace. We just start, it's a bit like when you're on the highway, right? And you stop looking at the speedometer and you're and you're just going with the flow. And then you realize you're 6 miles an hour over the speed limit, right? Just without even deliberately doing it, you've just kind of gone with the flow, and the flow is fast. So I think as a metaphor for life, that's a useful one to keep in mind, that the flow is around us is fast, and we need to be aware so we don't get caught up in it. So I always think of it as the speed audit. Every once in a while during the day, just stop yourself.
Right.
Ask, am I doing this thing now, whatever it is, at the right speed? If you are, carry on. If you're doing it too fast, just slow down a bit. Take a few breaths, go back to doing it a little more slowly, and carry on. And just a little embedding into your schedule, those little moments of deliberate awareness can turn the whole thing around for you.
Yeah, sounds good. I kind of think of the metaphor, in martial arts, for example, there's some soft meditative arts like Tai Chi and Aikido, where there are times when you advance and there are times when you retreat. So you harmonize energy with your opponent. So I can see that there's kind of a rhythm that is natural that you can develop. And you also talk about things like prioritizing tasks and things like that. And tell us more about that. What's a good way to do that?
Well, my favorite trick for that is what I call the not to do list. We all have a to do list, but
Yes.
I think it's just as important, maybe even more so, to have a not to do list. And the way it works is this: you say, okay, through the next week, I'm going to look at all the things on my to do list, and maybe this week, one thing every day, I'm going to move it onto the not to do list. And why is it useful to have that other list? Because we are so scared of doing less, of saying no.
Yes.
We think in the moment that it's going to be the end of our career or the end of this friendship or the end of that relationship. We're going to fall off the end of the earth if we say no to this one thing. But actually, if you look in the longer term and look back, most of the things that we do are not that important. They're just not that important. 6 months later, you can barely remember doing them or worrying about them. So having that not to-do list is really useful for looking back at it later. You come back a month later and say, okay, these are the things last month that I blew off. And you think to yourself, with a month's distance, you think, wow, why was I so worried about blowing those things off? Most of them, probably all of them, didn't really matter. And that gives you that confidence. It gives you that strength to carry on cutting and pruning and prioritizing and doing less. And doing less is such a key to, not only living fully and doing the best you can and being the best you can, but also to success. I mean, Warren Buffett, the famous investor, said once that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything, right? And that's a very crucial thing here. I talk about in my work in praise of slow. The flip side of that is in praise of no. Being able to say no, to prioritize, to do, because less is more. That's a key step to slowing down, is embracing the idea that less is more.
I like that.
Saying no.
Yeah, that's a very paradoxical. This whole thing's very paradoxical. The idea of doing the opposite, slowing down to be faster, actually. And we actually had a podcast where we talked about the power of no. But is that easier for people to say no to others? Because we often want approval, we want to be liked. So how do you teach people to say no to a lot of these extraneous demands that are taking away your time and energy?
Two things. The first is practice small acts of saying no. So next time you go to Starbucks to get your coffee, just make sure when the barista offers you, I don't know, cinnamon, say no, right? When you move on to bigger no's, say in the workplace, for instance, you need to do more than just say no. Have a gentle no. You have to give context why you're saying no in the moment. You're saying no because you're going to be a better colleague or a better partner later on, or give some background to the no. And I think that takes away some of the anxiety that you feel saying no and the person receiving the no feels. And once you get that virtuous circle going, that feeling good about saying no, it becomes easier and easier in the longer term, both for you and the people around you.
That sounds really great. And another thing is, this is what I found very interesting, Carl, is, on the show here, we talk about taking a technology fast, like, maybe 4 hours in one day, turn off your phone and move away from that, just to relax. And you have something that you talk about. The millennials are doing something called stacking, and they're actually doing kind of something similar.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Exactly. I love this new ritual that has sprung up among the digital native generation called stacking. Yeah, where when they go out for a Starbucks or a sushi or whatever, they're sitting around a table, everybody piles up their phone in the middle of the table.
Yes.
And whoever grabs the phone first to look at Facebook or send an Instagram update pays the bill for everybody else, right?
Aren't they smart enough not to do that? Or does someone always have a trigger finger and end up doing it?
I think there's probably in every group someone who just can't resist the temptation, the siren call of the screen. But it's just a lovely, nifty way of saying, we have this moment here together. Yes. We'll never have this moment again. Why spoil it by trying to be in several once? And the very fact that this ritual stacking is bubbling up from below, coming from the younger generation, I think shows that the tectonic plates really are shifting in our culture around technology. This is not something that's been imposed by burned out baby boomers who didn't grow up with the internet. It's been forged by people who grew up with screens who are saying, yeah, we're all over Instagram, but there are limits. It's too much. We want to know where to put some speed limits on the information superhighway, and we're going to start with stacking.
Yeah, I like that. And also, Carl, you mentioned slow rituals. You talk about gardening, yoga, cooking, or poetry. So is this something good for people to get into, some kind of slow ritual?
I do think it's important for all of us to have some kind of slow pastime, ritual, hobby, whatever you want to call it, that's just built into your schedule. So it could be, as you say, it could be yoga, it could be knitting, it might be pottery or poetry or who knows what, sketching, but just something that inoculates you or vaccinates you against the virus of hurry. So you have it in your schedule. It's always there. It's a sacred moment. And it just allows you to decompress, to step off that fast treadmill that other people are driving, and to focus on one thing that really means something to you. Because we all need that at the end of a day when we're being pushed along to go so fast,
Yes.
so often, just to have that freedom,
Yes.
that sacred bubble where you can retreat into it. And I think that's something we all
That's really
can
nice.
aspire to.
Yeah, I think the key is to have the balance. I think that's what I'm learning here. Yeah, because we have what are called slow twitch muscle fibers that deal with long endurance, like running. And, we also have fast twitch that deal with like powerful bursts of like sprinting. So I can see that, both elements have their advantages. But I think what you're saying is that we need to focus more on slowing down and getting those other muscles going, the slow twitch muscles, psychologically. And for people to live a, more relaxed and peaceful life. And if that's the case, then, Carl, is there a percentage that works? Does it depend on the person? How much of a turtle, how much of a rabbit should each person be? How do we determine that?
There is no universal percentage. Definitely not. Everybody is going to find their own percentage, And also, I think your percentage will vary. It'll vary at different times of the week, different stages of your life. There may be times in your career when it's just going to make sense for you, and you're going to respond well to being fast more than slow. But then you don't want that to become your way of being. You want to be able to change later on. Maybe a year into that career, you make that shift rather than get stuck in fast forward. So again, it's really all about each person reflect to work out the right speed, the right balance between fast and slow for them in that moment. Because you may work it out for this moment, but it may change a year from now, or even
Carl,
to be open to the idea that to be fluid.
Yes, I like that. Well, Carl, this has been an amazing journey today. I really appreciate you being on board. And some of this stuff is really going to be very valuable. I can see it applying in my own life and also a lot of our listeners. And, slowing down, enjoying life, basically savoring life, I think is the key because we don't have, to take time to that. Now, Carl, is there any way to get a hold of you? And is there anything you're working on? Any products or things that people can get a hold of you to get more information?
Yeah. Two things. If you want to know anything about me, my books, or anything speaking, or anything about the slow movement in general, my website is the place to go. So that's just www.carlhonore.com. As for a new book and our attitudes to aging, it's called Bolder: Making the Most of Our Longer Lives, and it'll be out in the UK next month, December, and it'll be out in North America in next spring, March.
Perfect. Now, aside from books, do you have do you do any coaching? Do you have any tapes or anything else or workshops that you do that listeners might be interested in?
Yeah, that's on my website. That's on my website too. I have an online course. I do coaching. I do consultancy work. I do keynote speaking. So it's all there. And anyone wants to get in touch and explore anything, I'm happy to talk on email. I don't have layers of people you need to get. We'll talk.
Okay, because you're slow, right? You're living a relaxed and slow life. So people.
Indeed. I am. I'm walking the talk.
Well, Carl, if you ever come out to LA, I mean, we'd love to maybe meet you, or maybe we can collaborate on something out here. If you ever get out to California in this area.
Yeah, love to.
And it's been a pleasure having you on board. So again, if anybody wants to get a hold of us at Love University and to talk about today's show or be a guest or any other things, you can reach us at loveuniversity.love, our website. Lovetype4u at AOL.com. That's LOVETYPE, the number 4, letter U at AOL.com. Reach us at 310-226-8090. So our audience today, thanks again to Carl Honore to be on the show. And all your listeners now, all your students, slowly put away your laptops, your iPads. And this week I'm going to challenge you. And I think, Carl, this is something we want to do as well, as to slow down your life a little bit, right? Have a little more relaxed time, spend more time with your children, your animals, eat slower, enjoy life slower, and live a wonderful life. Until next time, Dr. Alex Avila, Love University.